afternoon. It feels like morning though still.
It is a beautiful day out. We have not been inside.
We don't have 300 layers of clothing on.
Yeah, it's a very beautiful day.
I'm feeling a little tired today though still.
I am not. I'm just very relaxed
Very
a nice session with Willow this morning and Cody. So
yeah,
I got a simple question for you. What's your favorite thing about a horse? Like, what's your favorite thing to see them do, or what's your favorite?
That's a loaded question, isn't it?
It is, but you gotta answer it. Because I'll tell you mine after you tell me yours.
I love when they lay down.
Ha! See?
As if you didn't know that I was going to say that.
Yeah, right, seriously. That is, like, my favorite thing, too. Seeing them lay down, it's such a peaceful place. It's such a calm, peaceful, mindful spot that you can just be, and
it really is. And so
awesome.
A big reason for that, as you know, is they're prey animals, for one. So laying down in the wild is very vulnerable. It's a very vulnerable state for them to be in. And as I was just telling you as we were setting up, like, before getting into horses, I didn't even know that horses even laid down. In fact, I had thought that if they did lay down, something was, like, seriously wrong. And I questioned, like, I just wondered, like, how does something stand up, like, their entire life? Now, the majority of the time they're standing up, but they do lay down. And interestingly enough, you've witnessed just in the past 6 months, they lay down all the time.
They do. They lay down and roll. I mean, a horse, as some of you may know, a horse needs to, like, roll to help their digestion. But they lay down, like, calmly and playfully. They lay down when they're happy and excited, and when they feel good, too. I mean, that's been my observation. And so, I guess without further ado, our discussion today is all about laying down. Horses laying down.
Yeah, and you're going to talk a lot about the methods of training to lay down, right?
Yeah.
Haven't you gotten a lot of questions about that recently, or a good handful of them?
I haven't gotten questions about it personally, but I've seen a lot of people asking about it and asking about training methods. And again, not to me personally, just like a Facebook thread or, questions on YouTube to other people. But I've seen a lot, how do you train your horse to lay down? What's the purpose of them laying down? Why would one want to train a horse to lay down?
Right.
And there's, been a few really interesting topics.
So can you start there? Because I don't know, like, why would you actually want to teach your horse to lay down, other than the shock and awe of it?
That's an interesting question. One that I can't professionally answer, because honestly, I don't know. Like, the reason I train the lay down is because, and again, I'm training my very first horse. She happens to be a Mustang, and I have taught her to lay down on cue. And my reasoning for that is just because it's been a dream of mine since since I've seen it. Like, I think I saw it in a movie when I was maybe 9 or 10, and it's just been like, man, to lay down with this big animal and pet them, and with their eyes falling, like they're falling asleep, and they're breathing, like, gently, and they're just on the ground, letting you pet them has been a dream of mine.
So similarly for me, and because I'm very much like, I love petting dogs, I love petting cats, I love petting anything that's furry. Like, it's just cool. Like, they're created, in my opinion, they're created because that feeling to us also feels good to them, and it's a win-win. I didn't think that horses really had that ability to enjoy being pet. I most certainly believe, without any doubt in my mind, that they enjoy being pet, just like other animals when they want to be pet. Like, if you constantly try to pet, well, I mean, our dogs, like, you could constantly pet them. And so dogs are a little, like, their enjoyment factor of being pet is a lot stronger than horses, I've found. But when you get the horse to, like, actually, like, enjoy and, like, tell you that they enjoy being pet, like, Cody, I don't just rush up to him like, hey, how's it going, Cody? And, like, start petting him. Sometimes I catch myself now doing that, but it's rare. So a lot of times I'll just ask him, like, can I pet you, or do you want to be pet? And I'll just hold my hand out like a little from his muzzle. And it's so cool because he'll like lean into me. He'll push his muzzle into my hand, and then he'll pat himself. He'll make the nodding head motion and pet himself on my hand. So
Willow's different. She's very gentle about it. It's like, hey, Willow, do you want to be pet? And she'll like come over, sniff my hand. If she wants to be pet, she'll lower her head like into my hand, and then I just gotta scratch her really slightly because she gotta be so gentle with her. She's a very gentle, sensitive soul.
So it's really cool. Like, I'm jealous because, like, Willow will lay down with you on cue now pretty much anywhere. And I actually had thought that Cody would have been the first to lay down on cue. But this rewinds, a couple months ago when I came across James French's trust technique. And if you guys haven't heard of that, just Google it, James French Trust Technique, and go to their website and watch some of their videos, or go on YouTube, and we'll paste a link to it. His YouTube, it's called "I Have a Dream" video, and
beautiful.
I mean, he has horses just resting their heads in his lap while he's petting them and stuff like that. And so I was like, man, that'd be like really cool to do. And I think a couple days into that technique of just trying it out, Cody did lay down, but it wasn't really on cue. He was just laying down for the night, and I happened to be able to approach him. And normally, though, when I would approach him, he would pop right up. Mm-hmm. Now, as we just saw earlier, he doesn't pop right up. He is comfortable and content.
Yeah.
With us in his environment, which I find really cool. And same with Willow, clearly.
Yeah. It's really cool. I mean, to see Willow and Cody versus when we had Mocha and Cody, because of like our training methods and the time that we've been spending with them, our horses now are like they'll lay down as we approach them. They'll get up if we enter their pens, but their pens are also very loud and obnoxious as of right now. But I mean, before, when we would just come within, 6 feet of their pens, Mocha and Cody would both get up, and then they'd shake, and then they'd look at us and do what a horse usually does. It's really cool to be able to get pretty much within arm's length of our two horses now, and they just stay laying down. And they'll acknowledge us. I mean, they'll look at us with their ears up, but their eyes are soft.
Right.
And they're not, afraid of us.
Yeah.
They'll just look at us oh, hey, how's it going?
Yeah.
I'm just on the ground. This is great.
So maybe start with, how did you start getting Willow comfortable with you, not only being in her presence when she's laying down, but how did you teach it?
Oh, that's an interesting topic. So, as many of you may know, there are so many different ways to train the lay down. As there are so many different, everything else, there's the sky's the limit.
Would you say specifically the lay down teaching in some ways, what I've seen is some of the most harsh, in my opinion, harsh ways of teaching a horse out of all the tricks that can be taught. I don't like that word either, but out of all the tricks that can be taught, the lay down is it seems like there's so much emphasis on control.
Yeah.
Rather than communication.
Yeah, and that's a big thing. So I guess what you're saying is a lot of people, or I guess what you're saying is, quote, harsh, is like the tying them and the forcing them to lay down, tying a leg up and pulling on the halter until they submit and lay down.
Right.
Or tying a rope around their back, tying their leg up to their belly and waiting while they're running in circles, bucking, kicking, trying to get out of this pressure until they lay down.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
and that's very real. People do that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, people, there's...
With both domestic and Mustang.
Yeah. And, I mean, there was one thing I saw on social media just last night, in fact, and it was someone was saying, this is the very first thing I teach a wild Mustang. And this person seemed to be very experienced and, was just the lay down it's like the first thing I teach a Mustang. And the reasoning for that was that it makes the Mustang understand that the person isn't going to hurt them. When they lay down and they're in the presence, you can work on their feet, you can do virtually anything when they're on the ground because they can't hurt you. And therefore, I guess the point there being is that the horse understands a lot quicker that, hey, if I don't have to hurt this person because I'm on the ground and they're not going to hurt me.
Right. To me, that just sounds like submission.
Yeah. And it was a very forced, the video attached was the horse. I think if I remember correctly, this Mustang was, 20 days out of the wild, 30 days out of the wild.
Mm-hmm.
And, the Mustang had, the owner was holding the leg up and the halter and the rope was like, the horse's neck was completely turned to the other side and the horse was just going in a circle, going in a circle, going in the circle, and there was no release of pressure. If the horse would stop, then the owner would jerk the rope again and force the head over and until the horse laid down. And then as soon as the horse laid down, the foot was released, of course, and the pressure of the neck was released, and the horse licked its lips. That's all of the clip that I saw. It was like the end of it. I didn't get to see the horse's facial expressions after the lay down, anything. And
if you guys are listening on the podcast and not watching on the video, we do have a cat that decided to come and say hello, so if you hear the purring, that's what it is. He purrs really loud.
Yeah, this is Kristoff. He's our barn cat. Anywho, but seeing that horse being forced to lay down the way that it was kind of broke my heart, because in my opinion, the lay down, like you mentioned earlier, it's a vulnerable spot. The horse, at any point in time when the horse is laying down, the person could do anything to her, and the human could kill her. Let's be real here, and the horse can't defend herself. And that's, I feel like a lot of, I don't feel like there should be any force involved in the lay down. Any ropes, any whips, any, I even feel like treats is a little bit forceful.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, and that, I've
Willow... Tell us more about that, because I haven't heard you say that at all.
I've taught Willow lay down with the treats. But at first, when I had her lay down, I was clicking and treating her, she was afraid of me being on the ground with her. She didn't want me by her, and in a lot of ways, my treating her was forcing her to lay down. Now, it kind of goes back in my head, the treating is making it a good thing, yes, and I have seen Willow, go her own way, even if I do have apples and carrots, which are her favorite snacks, so maybe it's not as forceful, but I do feel like in a lot of ways, the treats can be a way to force them into something they don't want to do.
Which is, so comparing that to James French's trust technique.
Yeah.
So the trust technique, again, is all about, in a very basic way, about just being mindful and present with our thinking mind and matching our thinking mind to the horses or other animals for that matter, and to help them bring down their thinking mind to a state of at the deepest level would be a state of REM sleep, which James calls it a healing sleep. And so in that way, there's no force at all, and it's actually 100% opposite of force. It's just relaxation.
Yeah.
And so, that's really interesting that you mentioned. I haven't heard you say that. You think even like the treating is
I think it can be a way of force.
It can be a bit of excessiveness. Yeah.
One may ask then, so why did you use treats to train Willow to lay down? A lot of when I taught Willow to lay down initially, and we have purchased the trust technique course. Neither of us have really gone into it. He's gotten more far into it than
I'm about halfway through it.
I'm not an expert at it. I haven't done hardly any of the mindfulness stuff. And so to answer that question, simply because that's the only way I knew to do. And I had watched videos when I had Mocha on, teaching the lay down with ropes, but that's never clicked with me. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I've never liked the idea of forcing with the ropes. So Willow, she has a spot in the playpen, and I got this method idea from Mustang Maddie's Horse Human Connection Academy course. She goes a little bit into detail on how she trains her horses to lay down.
Does she go into any explanation as to why you would teach them to lay down, other than the
Not that
I guess
recall.
the coolness factor
Not
of
that
it?
I recall. She doesn't, the laydown isn't her top priority in the course. So
Right.
she's teaching the basics of understanding, timing and
Okay.
the basics. I'm assuming though in her membership course, after you go through the HCA course, she does go into detail about the laydown and why.
Because I could see, it would be really helpful from, especially a naked or bareback riding perspective, to have the horse lay down for mounting purpose. And actually, to me, to have that level of trust with your horse and in that relationship together, for them to allow you to mount and then ultimately get up and ride from that position, to me, just assuming there's no force involved with it, and in the training methods, it just seems like that is such a strong connection point.
Yeah. And I think, if I remember correctly, there was somebody asking in the group about in the HCA group you get access to when you are part of the HCA course. I believe somebody asked about that once upon a time because they had some sort of medical something, and so it was really difficult for them to mount, and they were asking, if it would be beneficial to teach my horse to lay down to mount. And I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, there were a few comments saying that it's possible, but doing that every single time could potentially hurt the horse, because it's it's difficult for them to get up on their own.
That makes sense. Yeah. If you just watch them lay down and roll, it kind of reminds me of an elderly person who can't sit down and get up very easy. And even when they're healthy, it's just that their bodies aren't, the construct of their bodies are, and they even get sores on their legs from the roll marks, that we have to tend to and stuff like that.
Getting up is, it seems very difficult, let alone, if we had extra pressure on their back,
right.
And not to say, that trick isn't, cool, or not to say that it couldn't be used, but I'm pretty sure it was the point of it was, you can teach that trick, yes, and it's going to be time consuming, but it wouldn't be beneficial all the time.
Yeah.
Because it can, put strain on the horse's back.
So what's interesting to me, as I've watched you, actually just go and sit down with Willow when she's laying down, is it's my interpretation of just observing that is that she actually enjoys it. And in fact, when you're not even here and I have the horses and I'm taking them on a walk, she'll pick, Cody might roll once or twice on our typical walk, maybe. Willow, like, she's got half a dozen roll spots around the property that she's just like, I'm gonna roll here, and then like, and she's so happy and like cool about it, and so it's really neat because I haven't like actually seen you cue the lay down, and in fact, it's just kind of like she picks a spot to lay down, and you come up and hang out with her after the fact.
So it's okay. So I taught Willow to lay down using the clicking and treating, what Maddie calls the scan and capture method. And that pretty much means the horse does something on their own time, and then you see it, you scan it, and then you capture it by clicking and treating for it. And essentially, I mean, her theory is that if the horse lays down in this spot, whenever they see this spot, okay, I see them lay down here, like, all the time. I'm going to see it, I'm going to capture it, I'm going to click and treat it, and then the lay down will become a very positive thing for them. And then every time that they see this spot, they're going to roll and they'll look at you for treats. And then you start cueing them. And so my cue is simply just sitting down on the ground. And then you start fading out of the horse's roll spot. And then the horse will just see you sitting down and then laying down next to you as a high value thing.
Yeah, and that's happened.
Yeah, and that's how I've taught Willow. Yeah. So she had a spot, and
it's amazing.
Our round pen, now we are calling it a play pen because, we don't use it for pressure anymore.
They use it for pressure on their own.
They round pen each other. It's the funniest thing. Cody and Willow will just like round pen each other around and then
+1 for natural horsemanship in that way, because they're like naturally like, I'm going to pin my ears at you and you're going to run.
It's pretty funny. And so there's like it's kind of on like a very, I don't know, it seems like it's on a little bit of like a hill. The playpen, it's kind of sloped down just a tad. So there's like a constant like. Very, very, very light slope. Okay. Yeah. So, but then there's a very sandy area. Whenever it rains, it gets pretty wet there. Yeah. Willow, she likes to be wet, but on her own times. Like, she doesn't like me spraying or putting water on her, but she loves to roll after it rains. Anyway, so she comes in the playpen, and she has a spot, and she'll paw. She'll look at me like, you have snacks? No? Okay, she'll paw, and then lay down. And I started by just, like, clicking and treating her with oats and seeds, and they're her favorite snacks. Unless we're counting fruit. But, so I just, like, treat her, and at first, like, I had to be just at my arm's reach of her mouth, because if I was any closer, she would have, like, gotten up and ran. Mm-hmm. In fact, she did do that a couple times where I would, like, lean in, and I'd try to feed her, and she'd be like, nope, and then she'd just take off. Which wasn't a bad thing. It just kind of told me I'm going too fast. Right. And, as time went on, and I work with her every single day on, trusting me with the positive reinforcement training I'm doing with her, that helps them trust quite a bit. So I've been working with her every day, and I took her in this playpen every day for probably about, 2 weeks. By the end of that, I would sit down, she'd look at me, and she'd go and find a place and lay down. She hasn't, laid down right next to me yet, but then she'll look at me with her ears up and her eyes all excited, and then I'll have to get up and relocate to where she is to treat her.
But now she's laying down right next to you.
Pretty close. Right? Yeah. Pretty close. Yesterday I had to move, 2 inches closer to her to treat her. But she gets so excited, and then when I cue her to get up, and that's just me standing up, I tell her, Willow, up, and then she'll get up, and she'll look at me, pin her ears at me, and then go and find another place to roll. Because she loves getting reinforced for rolling. And
so it was just, it's been a really cool thing to watch.
It's been awesome.
And I feel like, and maybe it's just my own interpretation of it, but I feel like it's bonding you guys. You're building a relationship, in a strong way.
Yeah. And like I've mentioned, or like we've mentioned earlier, it's a very vulnerable place for them to be.
To me, it's just that being her willing to be vulnerable, and you willing to go at her own pace, and therefore trust is developed between both of you.
And she's to the point now where, she'll lay down, and I can she does have a bit of a sore stomach sometimes, so it's like I can't like lay down on her belly yet, which I mean I think is coming soon. That's going to be legit when I'm able to do that. But she'll bring her face into me, and I mean I can pet her nose. I can almost stand up and pet her back. She'll let me pet like her butt and then her all four of her legs while she's on the ground.
Yeah.
And her hooves. And at first training, that was like, it was kind of difficult because I'd like touch her back hoof and she'd flinch. And so then I'd like, I'd click and treat it really good and then go sit and pet her on her neck where I knew she was comfortable. And now she just lays down and I don't even know if she expects it, but I touch her back feet and she's like, oh, that feels nice. Can you just give me a pellet now?
So do you think that this, and I kind of touched on it with what I just said, but do you think this kind of like carries on into other areas of training? Like as it being like kind of like a baseline activity? You know what I mean?
Well, I definitely don't think it should be like one of the first things taught. And my thinking behind that is because it takes a lot of trust and courage, and it takes a lot from them to lay down. But I guess what I'm asking, like in if it's done in the right way that is intended to build trust and comfort with the horse, then ultimately it's reinforcing the horse, right? Yeah. Yeah, and I mean that's my opinion on it. Mm-hmm. And and it's just like, to me, I think we should have as little as like the most communication possible between both parties and the little force as possible. And so that being said, hopefully with my next horse, when I teach the lay down, there won't be any treats involved. Mm-hmm. It'll all be just, like you were mentioning, the trust technique, calming myself, allowing them to calm down themselves, and they lay down and get reinforced on their own.
And that's how I'm working with Cody. I don't know. I'm using like a hybrid of those two methods.
But it's working.
Honestly, because I love the feeling that they give when we are treating them. And we've talked about this before. Like, we've worked with horses with absolutely no treats, and arguably they were hungry all the time. Not because of no treats, but just because of their typical feeding regimen. So I treat them, and to be fair and real, like when we talk about treats, we're not talking about like buckets of pellets or buckets of treats in a daily.
It's like
we're talking about a few handfuls a session, maybe.
I think on a daily, like when I'm doing consistent training sessions, I use maybe 3 cups of pellets. So it would be like a quarter to maybe a half, like not even a half. It would be like a quarter of a typical meal in pellets. And it's pellets, and then like 2 handfuls of oats.
Right.
It's
so the treats are very small. Like, you could fit like, a full handful is like an entire training session for me. Yeah. And like 1 click is like a quarter to a half of a pellet. Yeah. And they enjoy that.
Yeah.
And so and I've been able to teach Cody to stay out of my personal space because when I first transitioned from, the natural horsemanship techniques on the halter and, giving him some pressure if he's in my space. When I transferred from that to positive reinforcement, click and treating, he was very much like, oh, you have treats. So he would like turn into me and kind of not like he was never nippy about it, but he would kind of nose me a little bit and, or a lot of bit sometimes. And, so I've 99% corrected that just by essentially paying for position. We're walking and he's in a position that we're both comfortable with, and he's getting clicked and treated. Those little baby pellets, click and treat, and he's he kind of gets this like look on his face, like I would say like a little kid that you're like giving candy to, and he's like, oh, that tastes good, you know, and like you can see him like it's a little piece, and he's like working it in his mouth. Yeah, kind of like savors it.
Yeah.
And it's not about like he's getting a full meal or he's spoiling his nutrition or anything like that. And because other than that, we just have him on continuous feed Bermuda and a slow feeder hay net, or a couple of them in their pens that they can walk back and forth to. And then we feed him the Show Glow supplement once a day. Yeah. Just to get him some more vitamins and minerals. Honestly, I don't even know if that's 100% necessary. It's just they seem to like it.
they love it.
So, anything else to add on the lay down?
Not really that I can think of. I mean, it's I'm going to be honest, it has been my favorite behavior that I have taught Willow to do.
Well, and it just looks so magical. And I think part of that is just because they're so big. Yeah. We know that they could just like kick us in the head and kill us in a second. And by the way, we do strive to like, be protected about it. Yeah. Whether it's safety vest that will provide a little bit of protection, and helmet, definitely. Yeah. Sometimes we forget, sometimes we're a bit complacent. But largely we try to be as safe as possible. In those ways. So
I don't know. The lay down has definitely been my favorite. You keep saying you're jealous. Yeah. And it'll come. I guess.
Just like writing and all of the other stuff, like I'm not forcing it. And like it's really cool to really acknowledge and go at their pace. I mean, the trailer is a big one. Yeah. I mean, just this morning it's like, Cody, trailer, and he goes on all four. Yeah. And he's approaching, if not more, like I'm not counting it yet, but he's definitely approaching a minute duration in there. Awesome. Just hanging out before he decides, okay, well, maybe I don't want to be in here. And he politely steps off. And so I'm going at his pace. I'm not like get on the trailer and rush back and slam the door, and he's comfortable with it. So I think when it comes to the laying down, in just even the past week, like I've caught him in a roll or something and I have clicked and treated there just because I want to give him the opportunity to know that I'm comfortable with him doing that in my vicinity. And I also want him to feel as comfortable doing that with me in his space as possible.
So then maybe it's not as forceful as I may think it is, because
I see where you're going with that.
You say you've clicked and treated, and I've even observed, after he gets a handful of oats and seeds, he'll just get up, and he won't walk away. He'll just, get up. And maybe that's just him not understanding, but I think maybe he's just not comfortable with it, and you're not forcing him by, like forcing him back down.
Right. Like, let's do that again and again and again, just so that I can get the trick down. And
I mean, maybe it's not as forceful as I mean, that's just one example of, the treats not being used as a force. Instead, it's like an ask. It's a reward. It's a good job. And then when he doesn't, you're not withholding the food. So you're not forcing him to lay down. Instead, you'll redirect him standing up and have him walk with you or target your hand.
And it's the same about reteaching him how to be comfortable with a rider. Yeah. Like, as you know, like I completely stopped riding and I'm slowly putting it back in place at his pace. And even when I was riding almost every day and largely bareback, I think I've only had the saddle on him a handful of times when I first got him. I just personally don't like riding in the saddle. I just don't like it. And I had a mishap once and this is within the first 2 weeks of having him, where he got spooked or something. I didn't know what I was doing. He was rusty and he spooked and bolted, went into a full gallop. I lost my stirrup, almost came off, and I would have been caught up in my other stirrup. It just doesn't feel natural for me to ride in the saddle. I know there's plenty of people that would argue with me about that, but I'm more comfortable bareback. I feel like I'm more in balance. I'm more in tune. Anyways, as I'm starting to retrain him to be comfortable with me riding, or with anybody riding for that matter, I'm asking him literally, do you mind if I ride? And he will say yes or no. His no is a light step backwards. And I click and treat for that.
Good.
I acknowledge that no, and we press on. Does that mean he says no all the time? Absolutely not. And in fact, so his yes is just a lateral flex into me, and then I'll click and treat that, and then I'll go and proceed, and maybe I'll just proceed to mount. And I have been able to this past week mount a couple times, and then I'll reward that and get right off.
Nice.
And after talking to you about it, I think I was trying to speed it up a little bit too quickly. But in that way of being like very in tune, and I think this like comes back around to like the laying down technique, or really anything that we try to teach them, the more we go at their pace and acknowledge that they are like magnificent and they have a brain that is very in tune with the mechanics of their body, the more I've been able to see the subtle cues, just like today, where I was on, but I went to get off, and he kind of popped his head up, his tail swished, he said. I didn't see his tail swish, but in his ears pinned. So I've found that there's like a sensitive area at the base of his withers, like right in between, like his withers, and then it's like right in between his withers and where like my body would start if I'm on him. And so I wouldn't have been in tune with that at all. Not to say people aren't, because I know people that are, but me personally, I wouldn't have been in tune with that at all if I was just throwing a pad on him in a saddle and off we go riding, and so that's really helped me. And I think we're just talking about going at their own pace, and whether it's laying down, riding, trailering, what have you. And what I'm finding is the more I go at his pace, the quicker he absorbs it and the quicker that it works.
Yeah. It's a really cool, that's a really cool thing. Like, I mean, we've talked about, Cody and trailering in our previous episodes. Willow and trailering is a whole nother story. I mean, she was a Mustang, or she is a Mustang. She was wild, and she has had very negative experiences with the trailer. Not to say Cody hasn't either, but Cody, with the help of his and my fabulous father here, he's learned to overcome his fears of the trailer. Hence he steps all fours on the trailer when asked, which is freaking phenomenal. Willow... And
no pressure, and most times not even a halter.
Yeah.
So he could just go and do whatever he wants and go get all the grass that he sees.
He asks to go into the trailer. Mm-hmm. He'll be grazing and he'll stick... We have a 2-horse stock trailer?
Yeah.
And so, and he'll go and he'll stick... we're training Cody to go on one side and Willow on the other. And Cody will stick his face into his side of the trailer and then look at us like, hey over there.
Yeah.
I want to come in here. And, we'll just kind of... Sometimes he's opened the door and Cody will just walk right in there and... have his gets excited, and then he'll walk out and go on his merry way. But, long story short, he's learned to overcome his fear.
Yeah.
Willow has had so much trauma around the trailer itself. I mean, being, wild, she was forced into the trailer, unloaded. She was at multiple different holding facilities, so she was loaded up again, trailered, unloaded again. When she got to her first home where she was tip trained, she was loaded in a trailer. When she was brought here, she was loaded in a trailer, and it was all pressure and release. Mm-hmm. Now her tip trainer had alfalfa and the trailer, as she was being hauled here. But still, there was nothing, like Willow wasn't heard. She was not
acknowledged.
She was saying, you know, something like, heck no, that thing's scary. I don't want to go in there. I feel trapped. Whatever is going through her mind. And she wasn't acknowledged. And I mean,
and there's going to be like a lot of people that will disagree with that,
yeah,
but so be it. And and what we're ultimately just, so like with that, it's just like, no matter what, and dare I go out onto a limb and say, like, even if you're doing like natural horsemanship style training,
yeah,
there's still a level of like really making sure that, and I think it's even more difficult in this way, to like really ensure that you're going at their pace and acknowledging, rather than just trying to check boxes of like what they can do.
Yeah.
You know, and I think maybe we wrap up with that.
Yeah.
You know, like, I feel like a lot of times, no matter if we're training horses or dogs or cats or whatever it might be, that we have so much emphasis on our priorities. And we talked about this a little bit in expectations, but our expectations and priorities take precedent over like what that animal is actually going through in their own mind.
Yeah.
And so to the extent, regardless of the chosen training method, if we can collectively say, like, as humans, we're acknowledging, respecting, and going at the animal's pace,
yeah,
then I think that lends itself to be a lot more like, okay, we're not saying like this is the right way or wrong way. Yeah. It's just more about love and respect.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's very, I mean, the more we go at their pace and talk and communicate with them on what we'd like them to do and help them understand right from wrong, I mean, the faster they learn it, like you said, and the more, you know, the more I work with Willow on the trailer and, you know, help her understand that it's not a box that's going to eat her up, the more she wants to go in there, the more she wants to interact with it. And
yeah,
it's the same thing with the lay down. Like, the more I was treating her for, you know, laying down and allowing me to come closer and closer, and, you know, the more she wanted to lay down and the more she wanted to get reinforced for that. The more, I mean, now she'll like stare at me like I have 3 heads while she's on the ground when we're walking, just so I can come and sit with her and reinforce her.
Yeah.
And you know that you're not too far behind us with Cody.
Right.
I mean, we're you guys are certainly getting there. I can see it. And so, yeah, I mean,
it's all in good fun.
With all that said, thanks everyone so much for watching. We really appreciate it.
And listening.
Yeah, listening, whatever.
Cody's laying down again. That's great.
Thanks, Cody. And we will see you guys next week with another episode.
Bye.